Okay, this is Channel 12.
KBDI, Colorado Public Television, is proud to present...
This is viewer-sponsored public television serving the Front Range, KBDI TV 12, Broomfield, Colorado.
KBDI, Colorado Public Television, is proud to present Colorado Inside Out, bringing you a world view and a community voice while keeping our ever-watchful beady eye on politics and politicians. Brought to you by Studebaker.
Different by design. The Studi is a beauty that is different by design. The Studi is a beauty that is utterly, neatly, superbly, completely different by design.
And now, Colorado Inside Out.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Colorado Inside Out, the show that keeps you up to date on Colorado politics and current events. I'm John Rayburn from KLZ TV, Channel 7. Tonight, we take a look at the stories that have dominated the news throughout 1964, and we will try to determine what impact they may have on our state and on the upcoming presidential election. Let's first introduce our panel. Caroline Bancroft, Gerald Kopel, Al Nakkula, and Emma Baker. Let's begin by telling the audience a little bit about yourself. Caroline?
Thank you so much. And you are a good-looking man. You tell your co-host, Star Yelland, he's a good-looking man, too. I'm Caroline Bancroft, but everyone knows that. I am a third-generation Denver native. There aren't many of those at this table. I have been a historian writing about Denver since I started at the Denver Post back in 1928. I have covered this state's fabulous history. My most famous book, of course, you've all read it, is Silver Queen, The Fabulous Story of Baby Doe Tabor. But I have also written about Mrs. Molly Brown. I've written about Leadville. I've written about Central City. We live in a marvelous state, and I hope we can all discuss that tonight.
We'll be looking very forward to that. Gerald Kopel.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rayburn. I'm a Coloradoan by choice. I was born in Baltimore, and my wife and I have moved to Park Hill because we think it's the finest neighborhood in the state and maybe one of the best in the country. I'm the vice chairman of the Park Hill Action Committee, where I've led the fight to keep bars and liquor stores out of Park Hill. I successfully led the fight to rezone North Park Hill to keep it single family only. And I am a candidate for the Democratic nominee for House District 16.
And Al, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rayburn. I'm a reporter at the Rocky Mountain News. I'm the police reporter there, and I'm responsible for many of the stories that we'll be discussing this evening. Thank you very much.
And Miss Baker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rayburn. I am so excited to be here, particularly since I am not from Denver. I am a field director with the Congress of Racial Equality in Washington, D.C., but I have been sent to Denver over the last 5 years, every single year, because of the work that is going on here in Denver. And I must say, I also, Mr. Kopel, live in Park Hill, but mainly because I can't move to Southeast Denver. We still have those housing covenants, but I'm here to work on it. And I'm glad to be on the show. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have all of you. Let's get to it. Let's get a quick comment about the January visit to our fair city by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Across the nation, racial tension and incidents are on the rise. Did Dr. King's visit change any minds in Denver? Caroline, we'll start with you.
Well, as you know, Denver has and Colorado has a sorry history in race relations. We were the a very, very strong KKK movement here in the 1920s. So Denver does have some work to atone for. I think it was wise of the city to bring Martin Luther King here. I think it has signaled a change. Our studio here, the studio you work in, is in the heart of what was once really the black community of the Rocky Mountain West, and it's going through some harder times now, but I think it is time for all our peoples to pull together.
And Mr. Kopel, what do you think about the recent visits from Martin Luther King?
Well, he spoke at Montview Presbyterian Church, which, by the way, is my children's preschool, and he got a crowd of 2,000 inside and another 1,300 people outside. I think that shows how much support there is for his positive message. And as the Rocky Mountain News reported, he spoke in favor of states' rights because he said that states need to be the leaders in protecting the human rights of their citizens. And that's the most important reason I'm running for the legislature. We need a new fair housing law, updating our 1959 law, to put more teeth into it and make it really effective. And that means it should, most importantly, it needs to apply to owner-occupied homes, and it needs to fully apply to realtors and real estate brokers.
Mr. Nakkula, how effective will Dr. King's visits be for Denver?
Well, I think it could be very effective, and I think Representative Kopel is correct that the extension of fair housing in Denver and the enforcement of equal rights should come from the states. But Dr. King also said when he was here that if they don't do it, it's up to the federal government to do it. And Ms. Baker is right. There's pretty much a red line in this community. South of Alameda need not apply.
And Ms. Baker, what do you think will be the result from these visits?
Well, first of all, I have to say that, not to compare myself to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, of course, but I think in part he came here for the same reason I was sent by Washington, D.C. Corps here, because Colorado the state legislature has done some amazing work. Colorado was the first state in the country to have a fair housing law. Unfortunately, it's toothless, but you know, you got to start at the beginning, and Colorado has started at the beginning. And I think King's visit here shows that, is acknowledging the work of the state legislature and the work of the civil rights activists here. So I actually think it's actually quite positive, and that he is actually acknowledging Colorado's work.
Well, this year, President Johnson put forth an ambitious legislative agenda, the likes of which have not been seen since the days of FDR. President Johnson declared war on poverty, asked us to imagine a great society, and successfully pushed both the Voting Rights Amendment and a Civil Rights Act. Ms. Bancroft, this is a very ambitious agenda. What do you think the impact of all these different things that President Johnson presented this year will have on both Colorado and the country?
Well, his agenda has been compared to that of FDR, and all you need to do is look around Colorado to see the benefits of the FDR's time. Look at that fabulous place. We all enjoy the concerts there, Red Rocks. It's Colorado, the Civil the Civil Conservation Corps did all the work out there. It's just marvelous. And if President Johnson is able to bring that kind of beauty and those kinds of amenities to the state, that will be wonderful. I also wanted to address his Voting Act. You know, Colorado was the first state to allow women to vote. And I think we will see more equality for both coloreds, for all kinds of people, and for women too. You know, it is possible, as I have shown with my career, to be both very feminine and be a career gal, as I have done. So I think all people deserve the right to do what they want to do, live where they want to do, and certainly vote.
Mr. Kopel, do you feel that there will be any hurdles having this agenda come to reality?
Well, sure. One of them is, and President Johnson, to his credit, I was a big fan of President Kennedy, not so enthusiastic when he picked Johnson as vice president, but I will say President Johnson has exceeded expectations and has actually been much bolder than President Kennedy in proposing a strong, positive national agenda. But if that's going to work, there's going to need to be a lot of cooperation from the states in order to implement that and make that happen. And I would point out that as the Democratic nominee, I'm a strong supporter of President Johnson. My Republican opponent, John Moran, supports Barry Goldwater. One of the most important things I think that needs to be done in the next Congress is a Voting Rights Act. It's great we have the constitutional amendment that outlaws poll taxes in federal elections, but that's just a beginning step. We need a very strong federal Voting Rights Act so that the Negroes in the South can exercise their right to vote, and if that happens, I think it will change the politics so much that a lot of other problems will get solved.
Mr. Nakkula, we're talking about FDR's ambitious agenda decades later. Will they be talking about this agenda decades from now?
I think that they will. I really do. And one of the things that will be talked about the most is the Civil Rights Act that passed this year. And the dynamic behind that, I think, that will be talked about is not just the fact that it had to be bipartisan in order to pass. The division wasn't really along party lines on this at all. The real division was along Southern lines. It's all the Southern states, almost every representative, whether they were Democrat or Republican, voted no. Very few. There were only a few Democrats who voted yes down in the Deep South. But all the rest of the country, the 39 other states that were not in the Confederacy, produced vast majorities in favor of the Civil Rights Act. And I think that will be talked about for many years, and maybe it speaks to the hopefulness of building more bipartisanship in the future.
And
that's my hope, at least.
And that makes sense. Ms. Baker, what kind of impact do you think this agenda will have on the entire country?
Well, you know, I do want to get back to Mr. Nakkula's comment, but first I'll comment about that. I think it's going to have an impact. I got to tell you, you got to change the law, and some hearts and minds will follow, others won't, but then enforce the law against those whose hearts and minds don't change. And there is an important fact that I just don't think anybody has mentioned here. You've had civil rights activists who have been working for decades and decades to pass civil rights legislation in the states and at the federal government level, but something is different now, and what's different now is the world is watching. You know, this Cold War, I've been really upset with all this anti-communism, but one thing it's done is to help get some of this legislation passed. You've got the United States, who is so worried about the use that the Russians and the Red Chinese are making of discrimination in the United States. Well, they're busy battling all over Asia and Africa. And so the fact that you have these TV cameras and these radio microphones recording everything, it has mattered, and it has changed to the point where we're actually getting civil rights legislation passed. So I say, here, even if it's not for the best reason, the first thing to do is get the law passed.
Well, let's get to our next topic. After the highly publicized police burglary scandal of 1960, then Denver Mayor Dick Batterton hired the first Denver police chief to come from outside of the department, James Slavin from Kalamazoo, Michigan. But he only lasted a little over a year. When Tom Kerrigan won the mayor's race last year, he replaced Slavin with longtime veteran of the force, Harold Dill. Chief Dill has held the reins for a year and recently spoke about the changes he made to the department. When Chief Dill took over, the department was under strength by 80 men. By the end of this year, Dill expects to reach the authorized strength of 822 officers. We caught up with the chief outside police headquarters at 13th and Champa.
First of all, the Denver Police Department is back as one of the finest police departments in all of the country. Yes, we had our problems, but those days are over. We're going to get police officers back in the community. No more central planning department. We don't need a dozen men to put out press releases and propaganda. I will run the department. I don't need any help in that regard. I wish Chief Slavin nothing but the best. He can go back to Kalamazoo or wherever he wants to go. But Denver police are going to be run by Denver police, and I'm in charge, and this city's going to do just fine.
Mr. Kopel, Chief Dill has had a variety of things to clean up. What have you thought about his first year as chief of police in Denver?
Well, he certainly got a vote of confidence from the Denver voters in the primary a few weeks ago on September 9th. They voted to substantially increase their own property taxes in order to raise police and fire department salaries. I think that was the right thing to do, because as that big Life magazine story about the Denver police burglary, huge scandal, explained police pay had been so low that the temptation for some became overwhelming. An officer's base salary was $5,376, and then they can make $1,000 or $2,000 by burglarizing a meat locker or whatever. Too many of them fell into that. So I think that the voters did the right thing to bring police salaries closer to a wage at which a man can support his family.
Mr. Nakkula, this is your area of expertise. What do you think?
Well, that's right. You know, I wrote the first stories about the burglary scandal, and I followed it all through the indictments and the convictions and the prison sentences. And I'll tell you that there's got to be a fine line that you walk and a fine balance, because Mayor Batterton, you know, God bless him, he thought the solution was to bring in an outsider, and I think in the heat of the moment that might have made sense. But the fact is, The men on the force resented that even more. If you talk to the officer in the street, they had a lot more problems, Representative, than just the pay, as you probably are aware, but the working conditions and just the way the beats were assigned and getting more people out on the street. I think we had suffered through some economic slump where we weren't at full strength. And it was quite the job. And so the fine balance there is between trying to find someone on the force that all the officers can respect and respond to and go to the mats for. And they'll walk the beat for them. They'll do the hard work. You got to find that right person. I think Chief Dill can be that person. It seems that he is so far. The crime results, the numbers seem to be pretty positive. Again, no offense to Chief Slavin, but bringing in an outsider is really difficult. The culture on that department is that they want to respond to someone who's come up through the ranks and who knows them and knows the strengths and weaknesses of each person. We also have, as you know, have civilian control of the police under our charter. We have the manager of safety. And when I talk about a balance there, you know, the manager of safety right now is going to have a hearing on one of the city council members who owns a tavern where he's up for liquor license suspension, Elvin Caldwell. And where are Mr. Caldwell and Dan Hoffman, the manager of safety right now? They're in Philadelphia together on some kind of a junket. And next week, Dan Hoffman's going to have a hearing on Councilman Caldwell's liquor license. So we got to keep an eye on it. We got to make sure that the balance is always balanced and not weighted on one side or the other.
Ms. Baker, some worried about going back to a chief from inside the department so quickly after the scandal. What do you make of Chief Dill's first year?
Well, I must admit, I am a visitor to Colorado, although I have been coming here for 5 years. I was rather astounded when the scandal broke a couple of years back, and it reminded me of Chicago, the big Summerdale scandal of the same year, 1960. Now, it worked in Chicago. They brought in an outsider, and that saved Mayor Daley's job. So I do find the reaction, the negative reaction by the Denver police force to be just a bit provincial, okay? It is such an insular environment that you got to open up the doors, let some fresh air in. That's what I always say. But there's something else that, Mr. Rayburn, I noticed you didn't mention it, but the Denver Police Department enjoys a terribly fraught relationship with the colored and Spanish American communities here in Denver. And I would hope that Chief Dill would consider bringing on colored police officers and Spanish American police officers, because that relationship is one that is sour and actually could blow up. So more colored, more Spanish American cops, and open up the windows. I think it's good to get some fresh air in.
Ms. Bancroft, finish our analysis for us.
Well, next thing you know, she'll be suggesting women cops too. I do think women should have careers, but probably not as police officers. You know what, taking again the historic view, because that is my specialty, Denver has had some other police scandals before, but we have always managed to clean them up ourselves. The police officers were part of the KKK movement in the 20s. We cleaned that up. And I think now Mayor Tom Kerrigan has done the right thing by appointing someone who understands Denver, understands the police officers, and will be able to clean up our fine city. We don't need other people to do that. Mayor Kerrigan, I think it was such a good move. Someday he will have a building named after him, which will then subsequently disappear.
That's quite a prediction, a bold prediction. We'll have to see how that one turns out. And now, a word from our sponsor. If you're thinking about buying a car, why not consider America's most advanced automobile, the Studebaker Avanti. Studebaker and Colorado Inside Out, both different by design. Our next topic is, for more than a decade, the Denver area has seen incredible growth fueled by government agencies relocating to Colorado. But we now find ourselves in an economic slump, and we are also starting to see the downside to all of that growth. The counties surrounding Denver are beginning to push back against the city's annexation of land. Western Slope communities are pushing back against efforts to divert water to Denver, and a new term has entered our vocabulary: smog. Mr. Nakkula, what shall Colorado and Denver do about all this growth, especially since we're now in an economic slump?
Well, you tell you what, I think we're going to bounce back out of that real quickly. And you mentioned a lot of government agencies moving here, but it's not just government agencies. It's some of that government spending on such things as the space program and on defense. We have the Martin Marietta plant The Glenn Martin Company moved here about 10 years ago, put up the Titan missile plant down in Waterton Canyon. That's fueling tremendous growth down in Jefferson County. But as you mentioned, that is also fueling the pressure for Denver to continue annexing, particularly to the southwest. As some of those folks, they move into southwest Denver, Harvey Park, for example. A lot of those neighborhoods that have been annexed, of course, were developed before Denver got to them, and so they were built without zoning. There are neighborhoods without sidewalks, without adequate drainage and sewage. It could be a mess down there if Denver's not smart about it. But the pressure here is, remember, when Denver annexes, it annexes not just as a city, but as a county. And with it goes the school district. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if the suburbs start raising holy Cain because of those annexations, particularly into Jefferson County, where Denver is sending out fingers of annexations right up to the foothills that would cut off the Lakewoods and the Wheat Ridge areas that have not yet incorporated from the southern part of the county where a lot of the growth is going to take place. I think you could see a backlash against that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Ms. Baker, what do you think about the moves being made by the city of Denver?
You know, there is no doubt. I've already heard, and I spend half my time in New York and Chicago, and even I have heard about the backlash, if you will, from some of the southern and southwestern counties. And what Mr. Nakkula has not mentioned is the racial component of some of this background. Denver being looked at as a city of colored people, of Spanish Americans, and a city of ethnics. So there is backlash, and I would not be surprised if some enterprising individual takes advantage of the liberal reform laws that Colorado has and launches some kind of initiative. But as an outsider, I have to say about this growth, can somebody manage it? Where is the public transportation system in this town? How do you get around? I've looked to take the buses. Mm-hmm. And you all don't have subways here. I am shocked. Everything is car. Oh, excuse me. Our sponsor is a car company, is it not?
It is. So if you're going to buy a car, make it a slick Studebaker Avanti.
If I can't find a bus, I will.
But she is right, if I could jump in. She is right. Denver Tramway, our bus provider, is a private company and is dying on the vine. Legislature is going to have to step in and do something.
Ms. Bancroft, give us your historical perspective on a capital city, Denver, growing as it is.
Well, of course, I live in the same home I was born in Capitol Hill, many decades ago, in 1900, in fact. And there were horses. We've taken the streetcar. The cars are an advantage. It is hard, though, and there are other people who are not just ethnics in the heart of Denver. The beautiful Capitol Hill area is lovely, and all the historic homes, but I will come out of my house sometimes and I will see the smog hanging over the mountains, and it is a problem. I understand towns like Central City, Golden, former focuses for this state, wanted to be capitals. They want a piece of the action too, but we have got to figure out some way that we will not clog the streets and that we will not ruin our air and our beautiful Purple Mountain Majesty view.
Mr. Kopel, you're running for the legislature. If you are elected, what do you plan to do about these problems that are plaguing Denver and Colorado?
Well, first of all, in fighting for fair housing, I think I'll point out that in some of our new neighborhoods, North Glen, Applewood, places like that, when a non-white buys a house in the neighborhood, the people don't all panic and freak out and sell their homes and move away because the real estate agents have tricked them into thinking that real estate values are going down. Actually, the integration is happening in a more quiet way out there than it is in my Park Hill, where these racist real estate agents convince Mr. Panic that, a black person bought or Negro family bought a house in your neighborhood, and therefore that's the end of it. You might as well sell out. And they try to have the block flip in 18 months and going from all white to all Negro, where really we're better off with integration. That's the American ideal. On the economy, there's something else important. Denver has only 1% of the country's population, but we've got 3% of bankruptcies. And that is terrible for our economy. And part of the major cause of that is unfair laws against consumers. Do you know that right now, if you borrow money from somebody, they can go to court, they can go and garnish your wages without you even take all of your wages from your employer. And you don't even have a chance to go into court and have a fair hearing on that to see if you really do owe the debts. So that's something that's got to be fixed, and that will help the economy too.
With only a couple minutes left in our program, let's get to a special section that we do every single week, the Disgrace of the Week. Ms. Bancroft, please start us off.
Oh, thank you so much. I mentioned the beautiful Red Rocks facility a little earlier, the concerts we can enjoy there. I don't think we need to have groups like the Bugs, or what do you young people call them? The Beatles. We do not need to have groups like that at that beautiful, beautiful arena.
Mr. Kopel.
Well, unfortunately, the Broncos, who I love, but they were 2-11-1 last season, and it looks like this one's just going to be just as bad. They've lost their first 4 games.
Mr. Nakkula.
Yeah, Ms. Bancroft, I was there at that concert with the Beatles. I wrote the review for the Rocky Mountain News. I'm still recovering my hearing, but I am growing my hair in their honor. But my disgrace of the week is City Auditor Chuck Byrne. When Dr. Martin Luther King came to visit earlier, he questioned the city's Commission on Human Relations decision to pay the $200 stipend for the speech on the grounds of the Constitution prohibiting payments to religious organizations. Dr. King came here as an individual to meet with many agencies, and that was a payment that was proper. Chuck Byrne wants to run for mayor. He's got to be more careful about what he does.
And Ms. Baker.
Here, here. Well, I have got to point the finger at Governor John Love, Colorado's governor, for refusing to put a bill that would strengthen Colorado's landmark fair housing bill on the legislative agenda. Shame, shame, shame.
Well, let's get to our the other weekly section we do on every single program. Say something nice about someone. Ms. Bancroft.
You know, Colorado has some beautiful, beautiful historic buildings. The home I live in, there's the wonderful house that Margaret Brown lived in, which deserves to be a museum. And sadly, we just lost the Tabor Opera House. You know, I've written books about Baby Doe Tabor and Horace Tabor, and it was a lovely thing. We must save the rest of our architecture.
Mr. Kopel.
John Birmingham, a Republican attorney, won his primary recently, and so he's likely going to represent his Denver district in the Colorado State Senate. I think he's a man I'm looking forward to working across party lines with on a strong fair housing law. And even though Governor Love, who I crossed party lines to vote for in '62, has not been a leader on fair housing, I am hopeful that he will be a follower, and we send him a tough bill, he'll sign it.
Mr. Nakkula.
The United States Supreme Court. They decided in the Sullivan case that the New York Times, in a case of libel, that the plaintiff had to prove that there was actual malice in the case, that there was actual malice when you are a public figure. So I'm saying if politicians can lie without consequence, then why not journalists?
And Ms. Baker.
Well, Mr. Rayburn, I have two. I like the Beatles. I think we have to stay young at heart. So let's hear it here for John, Paul, Ringo, and George, that would be, and then also for the core protesters, the Congress of Racial Equality, Denver chapter core protesters that actually occupied part of the state capitol in protest of Governor John Love's intransigent.
Well, regarding the Beatles, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I'm more of a classic radio fan, but the young people seem to like it. That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out tonight. We hope you stay tuned for more great programming on this public television station. For everyone here on Channel 12, I'm John Rayburn. May all your news be good news. Good night.